Welcome back to the Rating Room podcast. My name is Jay, and if you've been listening over the last few weeks, you know we've been diving deep into the Netflix hit All of Us Are Dead. In case you missed it, I kicked things off with a rapid review episode giving my own first impressions. We're continuing the conversation with dedicated fans like yourselves. We're getting to know their thoughts, rankings, and of course those all-important ratings. So buckle up because this is where things get interesting. Today, we are meeting...
Hello, my name is Daniel. I'm your regular zombie genre reviewer. Happy to be participating.
Thank you for coming onto the show, Daniel. So obviously, a few weeks ago, I released the episode of All of Us Are Dead as the rapid review from the Rating Room. So we've got a few guest episodes lined up over the next few weeks, and Daniel is our first guest. So thank you for coming onto the show, Daniel. So let's get straight into it. So first question, what attracted you to the show, and how does it stand out in terms of the realm of zombie-centric entertainment?
I've always been a fan of the zombie genre ever since I saw Train to Busan, and what drew me to the show, other than the zombies, is the premise of being caught in a zombie outbreak, but like in an everyday situation. A situation like you'd find yourself in, and well, besides, I've never seen the concept of being caught inside a zombie outbreak in a school before.
So, you know, in terms of Train to Busan, that's one of the films that whenever I think about watching, it's never on any of the streaming platforms that I subscribe to. So would you recommend for me to watch that one? Because I hear and read great things about that film.
Yeah, I definitely recommend you to watch that movie. That movie is like, I'd say it's like one of the perfect zombie survival stories, because pretty much it's mostly just a fight for survival, and like from people like us.
Did they make a sequel to that?
Yeah, they did, but the sequel was pretty disappointing because, well, at least in my opinion, what made Train to Busan exciting was because it was like set during the day of the zombie outbreak when all hell was breaking loose, while the sequel was like set in like 5 years after that, and like pretty much everything is kind of like blown over, and it's just your typical post-apocalyptic stuff. Nothing any new came out from the sequel, and well, it technically wasn't really a sequel, it was more like a standalone sequel, like a movie set in the same universe.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So before we get into All of Us Are Dead, I just got a couple of other questions. So you've obviously mentioned Train to Busan. Is there any other TV shows or films that you like in terms of zombies? And if so, what are your favourite ones?
Yes, I'm a fan of yes, I know quite a few movies. I'd say my favorite zombie movies would be #Alive, which is another Korean zombie movie. Another would be Resident Evil, the 2002 movie. And another one would be Shaun of the Dead. Also, another one that I really like is Night of the Living Dead, but like the 1990s remake of it.
To be honest, I don't actually watch many zombie films. It's not usually a genre that I gravitate to, but the All of Us Are Dead I've had on my watch list for a while, and I watched the trailer a few times, and I kept reading it. It got really good ratings, and I've got back into a lot of Korean programs. So I've been watching TV shows like Kingdom, Squid Game, Hellbound, Sweet Home. The Glory was recommended by a person at work. That's really good, and Alice in Borderland as well. So I kind of got the appetite again watching some of these Korean dramas. So I'm glad I obviously watched it, and obviously I'm going to talk about our ratings later on. In terms of Resident Evil, have you seen any of the other Resident Evil films? And also, did you have an opportunity to play any of the games?
I played the Resident Evil 2 remake, which I really loved, and I've also played a bit of Resident Evil Outbreak, which is a lesser known title. And in terms of other Resident Evil movies or stuff I have seen the Welcome to Raccoon City, the movie they released in 2021, I think. And as well as I did start seeing the Netflix series, but I did not like it, and I quickly stopped watching it.
Yeah, I did the same in terms of the next Netflix TV show. I've watched some of the Resident Evil films. My wife, she likes horror films, so she's watched all the Resident Evil films as well. We haven't watched the #Alive though, so I think I put that on my watch list at some point as well. Moving on, Daniel, the show interlinks elements of horror, drama, and obviously it's based in the school, so there's coming of age kind of themes as well. How successful do you think it is in terms of balancing all these different genres?
I'd say so, as the story itself mostly focuses on the elements of the zombie outbreak, but at the same time, the show also does, like, at least in the beginning, shows us glimpses of all these teenagers' lives before the outbreak. All of them are like, all the characters are thrown in a life and death situation, And it's obvious none of them want to die, but no one seems sure if they will live or die. And if you start rooting for the characters, you start getting like that sort of anxiety as you want them to live.
You've obviously focusing on the students at the school, but one of the things I liked as well is how it balanced, where you saw some of the teachers, the different parents as well. So I liked how they had the what's happening in the school, but also what was happening outside of the school. And obviously one of the parents was trying to make their way to the school to obviously save his daughter. So I think it did really well, personally speaking, in terms of balancing all these different themes as well. And like I said, I'm not a big horror fan, so I did like the horror side of things, to be fair, but I did like all the drama and the coming of age themes as well. I thought it was really well done, season 1. So moving on to the next question, Daniel. I've kind of just mentioned about some of the characters. So in terms of the characters in the show, obviously, they're facing intense situation. There's moral dilemmas as well. You're obviously struggling for survival. Is there any particular character arcs that you liked the most, and why was that?
Yeah, I'd say the arc I liked the most was Namra's arc. Namra, she is the class president. You can kind of compare hers to Yoonji's arc, and for those of you who don't know, Yoonji was the girl who was being bullied at the beginning. And at first, I was actually sympathetic towards Yoonji, as I related to her a lot. But as the series went on, Yoonji's her rootability began falling apart the more after she became a half-B. And one thing you can compare to both Namra and Yoonji is that both of them are outcasts, though Yoonji suffered much worse than Namra. But when Namra becomes a half-B, she chooses it to use its advantage to help her friends and becomes like the group's secret weapon against Guinam the bully. And unlike Yoonji, who to her credit, at first she didn't exactly resort to killing anyone she saw. And at first she pretty much killed people who pretty much had done her wrong who had wronged her in her life. But then she ended up dooming herself once she killed her friend in the quarantine camp, even though he deserved it. While Namra herself never succumbed to the desire to eat and ended up doing the right thing when she left the group. While Yoonji, after she killed her friend, she was immediately restrained by the military, and God knows what happened to her after that.
Yeah, and I think in terms of number, and like you kind of said then, you had part of the first episode obviously focusing on these characters and introducing these characters as well before obviously the zombie outbreak. So Number, like you mentioned, was the class president. She was very quiet, sturdiest as well. I think it was interesting, and if you like the bullying side of things, the TV show I mentioned, The Glory, I don't know if you've seen that. That's very good, because that goes and that talks about a young girl that was bullied in school by 4 other students, and then it cuts to, I think it's around 10 years later, and it's about her getting revenge on her bully. So that's really a good show. As I just mentioned, in terms of the beginning of the show, but also just looking back now, you've obviously watched season 1. So looking back at everything, were there any kind of early moments or clues kind of foreshadowed how certain characters were going to develop? Because you've obviously touched on what happened to Numra and at the end kind of making the right choice. Was there any kind of instances where it kind of alluded to that at the beginning?
Yes, I definitely think there were clues that foreshadowed the characters' decisions or fates, as there is one that can be seen in the background when in the second episode, when the group is fleeing into the hallway from their classroom after the infected coach came in. And when the zombies start attacking them, one of the girls who are running ahead of the group, who are behind Nayeon, is Jimin. And when the zombies start attacking, Jimin immediately turns to run away when she sees the zombies, and she doesn't even try to bring her best friend Hyeryung with her. And for those of you who don't know, Hyeryung is the girl with the pink vest. And I think this actually foreshadows her betrayal when she leaves Hyeryung to die in the rain.
In the show, there's some really cold moments like what you've just mentioned there, and I don't know what if you found, and I think I said this on the review that I did, I found myself getting really stressed at certain parts, and I wasn't shouting so much at the screen, but I was at the edge of my seat, kind of moaning, saying like, "Why are you doing that?" You know, I just got really engrossed into the show, and we're going to talk about our favourite characters later on. But you start bonding with like your favourite characters, and when things like that happen, oh, I find it really infuriating, bits like that you just mentioned, Daniel. Next question, Daniel. I'm just throwing all these questions at you. The show tackles themes of bullying, class division, and societal breakdown. Now, how effectively do you think the show weaved these different elements and themes into the zombie narrative?
I think it actually did a pretty good job, at least with the bullying part. The bullying part, it tackled it really well. As I suffered a lot of bullying when I was younger, and it was through several schools, not just one school. I think the show portrays what the bullies do pretty realistically. As usually when I when I watch the series again, I usually skipped over every scene that showed the bullies, as it always reminded me of bad times and stressed me out. As well as it shows the reason why most victims don't even bother to fight back, as, well, at least in my experience, I felt that if I ever fought back, the next day would just get worse. So there was no point. As well as why the schools don't even care about those suffering. And also, one thing I have to point out is how it portrays like how problems usually are ignored and only ever have attention ever paid to them once they turn it into like something way too big to control, which ended up like a catastrophic event. And this is exactly what happened in the series. And if you actually read about disasters in history, there were many disasters that like usually started as small problems, but small problems that were ignored and were only ever paid attention to once they like turned into something big and ended up like killing many people.
I remember the scene, you know, where the tutor went and spoke to the other teachers, and they were just angry that she went and phoned or tried to phone the police. It's one of those that are very much self-preservation there. They're looking after the school, and it's what we just mentioned there is you see those themes in the other TV program I mentioned about The Glory as well, where the teachers are covering up certain things, especially bullying as well, because of that perception about the school being really, really good, and they're just hiding everything there as well, these kind of elements. So have you seen the show many times then? Because you said you've watched it at least twice.
Yeah, I've seen it like a few times because I actually like at one point I started like one of the reasons I rewatched it was because I was trying to like recreate the entire like all the scenes, like every place from the show, like in the game developing software. I tried to like recreate the entire school area.
All right, cool. Is that like a hobby or part of what you do, like a job in terms of game development?
Yeah, actually, it's more of a hobby.
Nice. Did you manage to do that then in terms of like the break room and the setting set up? Did you complete that, and how did it work out?
Not really, sadly. Well, I was able to build the entire main school, but I wasn't able to like complete school grounds because once I started like making other buildings and backgrounds, the engine started like glitching out because of how many objects were in, so I kind of had to stop doing that.
The show has some truly intense moments. You've mentioned the break room just now in terms of setting things up. What were your favourite scenes as well in terms of like pure horror, suspense, or just generally? What was the standout moments?
Well, I'd say my favorite moments were like during the outbreak. As well, I sure love a good zombie outbreak scene. As we could see in the show, all hell breaks loose and panic takes grip. And my favorite scene from the outbreak was the cafeteria scene, as that is a definition of pure mayhem. And I've never seen a zombie outbreak in a school cafeteria done before. And a scene I'd say was of pure suspense would be the one when the group was trying to escape through the rain and in the darkened halls of the schools. And you can hear and even see a few zombies echoing through the halls, which makes the nightmare fuel. In terms of like horror, I'd say the scene that like stuck the most to me was Jimin's death, because in the show she ends up abandoning her friend, and for some reason she ends up running down into the field and she just gets lost and killed there. But the thing is, just imagine being lost in the darkness and just there are a bunch of zombies around. You know you are doomed to die, but you don't know which direction death will come from.
In terms of the cafeteria scene, that was an amazing scene, and I mentioned it in the review that I did, that they actually shot that in one single take, and it involved over 200 crew members and actors as well. And I think that was so well done, and like you said, said, I personally don't recall any kind of other zombie films set in a school. So there might be ones out there, but I don't recall. And like you were saying there about various scenes as well in terms of the suspense and horror, one of the things that jumps out to me is the one where she deliberately infected the boy with the virus. That was really distressing for me. You mentioned that this is realistic because it's like everyday kind of situations in terms of it could be us in this situation. My wife thinks I'm weird because, and I don't know if you're to say it, I might just be weird, but sometimes when I'm just going about my day-to-day things, I think about scenarios. What happens if there was a zombie outbreak or an alien invasion? And then I think, okay, I've got to get home. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. So I don't know if that's something you ever think about, Daniel, or I'm just being a bit weird. But, that is the everyday things that happen. And I remember watching recently World War Z with Brad Pitt. I've seen that quite a few times as well. And I quite like that film because, again, I think that's quite different in terms of your typical zombie films. And as a man with his wife and his two daughters and trying to survive, then he gets obviously pulled to investigate the origins of virus. Have you seen that film before, World War Z?
Well, kind of. I've heard about it, and well, I've seen a few movie clips about it. But I have heard some information because do you know World War Z is actually based off a book?
I think I don't know, there's multiple books. I think there might be.
Well, one fun fact is that, well, the author, he actually saw the movie, and the movie is pretty much nothing from what he wrote to the book. The movie pretty much is something completely different, with the only same thing being the name.
Yeah, I know the ending's very different in terms of the book and the film. And apparently the film, they shot at least 2 endings and they were very different, and it opened up the possibility of having a sequel as well. And if there was a sequel, the ending that they used would have been completely different in terms of how the sequel was set up compared to how the book was, because the alternate ending was how it finished in the book. So just going back though, Daniel, do you ever imagine yourself in these kind of situations with zombies and what would happen, or is that just me?
Yeah, I know like a few people, including my own brother, who we all every once in a while when we are bored or we just have a lot of stuff running in our heads, we like to imagine what would happen like you said before, a zombie outbreak or an alien invasion would happen. I sometimes, when I'm at school, I imagine what would happen if a zombie outbreak accidentally happened. I would try to think what could I do if I should try running back home, or if I should just stay put.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. I work an hour away. I work in a hospital, and it's an hour's drive. And I do sometimes, when you're stuck in traffic, I think to myself, oh, what would I do now if there was a zombie outbreak? Because in zombie films, you always have a shot of a motorway where all the cars are just being abandoned. You see it in everything, like The Walking Dead, any kind of zombie film. You always get that kind of scene. And now I'm pretty much stuck in traffic every morning and coming home, and I just think about it. Not every day, obviously. I'm not that weird.
Well, really, I'm pretty sure if a zombie outbreak were ever to happen, I'm 90% sure I would be one of the zombies the main character would encounter, because a few days ago, I think a week ago, I went on a school trip and we had this activity which was pretty much a zombie survival challenge. We had to go around a small town and collect clues. There were a few people who were dressed as zombies, and if they touched you, you would become a zombie. My group we were actually able to collect 3 clues before we all became zombies. And the worst part is, a girl from my group, she tried to sacrifice herself to save me, but in the end, I just ended up dying anyway.
Oh, that sounds really good. I've seen those kind of things, kind of experience days that you can do. I've never been on one myself, but that sounds really good. Is that something you'd recommend?
Yeah, I definitely would recommend. And I don't know if it's the best or worst part, is that because my group got infected so quickly, we actually ended up accelerating the infection rate around all the other groups.
You've doomed humankind there. So let's get back to All of Us Are Dead. I'm digressing here. Let's talk about the ending now. What were your thoughts on the ending of the series? And were you happy with the conclusion? Were there any elements that kind of left you wanting more, or anything that you kind of thought, oh, I wish they did that instead?
Well, I'd say I liked how the way it ended, though there were a few plot points I wish it could have been done differently. But in the end of the day, it's the series is already filmed, so well, there's no reason to change it. And how it ended, I think it was fine. With the way it ended, we know that the remaining characters were safe for now, but at the same time, we now know that there are more half-beats in the picture. and there is more of the story that can be told. One element I would want to know is if there were more uninfected survivors from the school, as in the series we only ever see two groups of surviving students, with it being the main group and the other being the senior group. In the webtoon, the main group of survivors actually spots and helps another group of survivors who are fleeing the school before them. But in the series, we never see such thing happen, which I'd say I'm disappointed, because that scene from the webtoon really was a really heartwarming scene, as it showed how there were still others alive, as well as showing the best of humanity.
So in terms of the webtoon then, you've obviously mentioned there's a difference. In the webtoon, do you know if those other survivors that you've just mentioned, do you see whether they survive or not, or are they, taken out by the zombies?
Unfortunately, no, because sadly we never see what happens to them. The only thing we do know, because of the group's help, they are able to escape school grounds, but in the webtoon, the school isn't actually destroyed by a bomb. It's actually the entire city is contaminated by a stink bomb that ends up killing all the zombies. And well, the main group thankfully have the knowledge to know that there's a stink bomb, and so they ultimately run for the hills. But the other group, the one they helped, sadly, we don't know if they ever had the chance to know that there's going to be a stink bomb. So in the end, it looks like their fates are pretty much left up to the viewers, whether they were able to escape the city and the school, or if they were either killed by zombies or by the stink bomb.
You've obviously mentioned the difference there. Were there any kind of other major differences between the webtoon and the TV show? Because I've not seen the webtoon.
Yeah, there actually were a few big differences. Well, one of them being, the bully. In the webtoon, he actually kills a lot more people. There are many other survivors in the school who he ends up killing, and that's not the worst part. The worst part is what he does when he finds a female survivor. I'm not even gonna say what happens. And well, also the way he kills Na-yeon in the webtoon was I heard rumors that it was originally more graphic and more worse. So much so that in the webtoon, they had to censor it.
Blimey. We're trying to keep things light-hearted on the rated room, so I won't dig any deeper, Daniel. Let's move on to the next question. We've obviously talked about the conclusion now of season 1. So there's lots of different things bouncing around in terms of season 2. Do you have any kind of thoughts about season 2? There's any kind of elements that you want to see explored further? Do you see the half-buys as a potential solution or a possible new threat to humanity?
Yes, I would love to see more explored to it, though I wouldn't like it if they, the series creators, dragged out for more seasons, as I don't think the story would ever reach past season 3 without dragging itself out. With the half-bees, I'm kind of torn, because on one hand, the Jonas virus, the virus that creates the zombies, is a devastating virus that, any potential vaccine should be made against it, as soon as possible. But at the same time, there are half-bees like Namra are pretty much still living beings and should be treated humanely as possible. But whether they are a potential solution or a new threat to humanity, it's up to the half-bees themselves, as since they still have rational thought, whether the half-bees can pretty much choose what they want to be. They can either choose to be a solution or a threat. And if history taught me anything, is that some people will pretty much take advantage of any situation to hurt others.
Just one follow-up question there, Daniel. Do you think the concept of half-buys is a fresh take on the zombie genre?
I think so, because I've never seen or read another series before, or movies, where there are infected people who retain the viruses, who are technically infected but still have the rational thought to do rational decisions, and end up using the virus as a advantage. Because at most, and in other media, at most I read there are people who are symptomatic, who can spread the virus whether they want to or not, and then there are people who are immune to viruses who cannot be infected. But with half-bees, they're kind of the two. Actually, they're not even a mix of the two of them. They're a mix between I think the asymptomatic, because they still retain rational thought, but at the same time, they also gain the virus's advantage. What the virus was originally meant to do.
I was surprised with this concept, because usually in zombie films or TV shows, once you're bitten, that's kind of the end of the show for you. I think that was an interesting concept, and kind of alluded to some other Korean dramas I've watched. Korean dramas are finding a lot of international success over the last few years. What elements do you think make Korean dramas appealing to the global audience?
I think because, well, Korean dramas give you, first of all, they give you like a glimpse into a different culture since all of them are set in Korea. And well, also because ever since Train to Busan was made, the filmmakers in Korea have been doing a really good job in making zombie related content. And what makes, well, K-zombies better, at least in my opinion, compared to Western zombies, at least now these days, is that most of the stories, like in Korean zombies, take place in like everyday situations and show everyday people like us being caught like in outbreaks. And most of the protagonists are like, well, have little to no experience in either fighting or even the use of a firearm. And so we end up relating to them better and end up rooting for them as they pretty much like start using anything they can get their hands on to defend themselves from the zombies.
Let's just take a step away in terms of All of Us Are Dead at the moment. Do you have any other favourite Korean TV shows or any kind of, what kind of drew you to All of Us Are Dead or other K-dramas in general?
Well, first of all, what drew me to All of Us Are Dead was, well, the zombie genre. As I said before, ever since I watched Train to Busan, I loved Korean zombie movies. And well, in terms of other TV shows I would recommend, yes, I have a couple of ones. There is one called The Dairy Girls. It's a really fantastic comedic teenage show, which every episode is pretty memorable. And for starters, the characters, they actually look and feel like actual teenagers from the way they talk to their behavior. Another show I recommend is there's one called the Santa Clarita Diet, which is kind of another zombie show, but it has zombies, but it's not a zombie outbreak. It's a perfect blend of dark comedy, gore, and heartwarming moments, something that I wish more comedy shows would have now these days. And then there's another show called Dark Hole, which is, well, a Korean zombie show as well, which, well, combines various survival elements. And then there is, the last I would recommend is called Into the Night. It has a really fantastic atmosphere. In every scene you watch it and follow the characters, there is this sense of dread, the sense of that you cannot stop, you have to keep going. Though I would only recommend you to watch the first season of Into the Night, as the second season is pretty disappointing.
The regular listeners to the Rating Room will know that myself and Andy, we talk about our rankings and ratings as well. So in season 1 we did James Bond. We rated and ranked all the James Bond films. Season 2 we picked a number of Tom Hanks films and we did the same again. And season 3 is our mixtape and we're doing various elements there. So make sure you listen to our weekly show to get our latest rating and rankings. So Daniel, let's focus on All of Us Are Dead. Your favourite 3 characters, who are they and why?
My favorite 3 characters are Choi Nam-ra, the class president, then there is Lee Soo-hyuk, well, her boyfriend, and then there is Jung Min-jae, the other archer who was with Hari. The reason why I'd say Nam-ra is the first one is because of her arc, as I said before. She was pretty much an outcast, and well, she was with these survivors, and after she got bitten, she did not want to hurt anyone, and so she ended up the advantage of her becoming a half-breed to help everyone else. And not gonna lie, it looks pretty badass seeing her, a simple schoolgirl, in her school uniform, beat up like zombies. I'd say my favorite scene with her was when she beat up Green Am. It was just so badass for her. And the second would be Soo-hyuk, because he's like a pretty selfless person, and he knows how to fight. He's the only member of the group who knows how to fight.
I think in terms of the fighting, Daniel, sorry to interrupt you, I thought the fighting was brilliant in the show. And like you mentioned, Soo-hyuk was brilliant in the fights. I thought they were really intense. And I don't know if you're the same as me, but when you're doing that kind of martial arts, you're thinking oh, be careful, because all you need to do is just get bitten. And when you're doing a throw or a punch, it's really dangerous, because like you kind of mentioned earlier on, zombie films, you tend to be it's not really realistic. People have got guns and stuff like that and shields, and it was just so intense, the fight scenes, especially it's in the library, where they're jumping on all the bookcases, and I thought that was really good as well.
Oh yeah, that was really anxiety inducing, because if you were in that situation, one wrong step and you're done for. Yeah, the last one being Jung Min-jae. He is the other archer who was with Hari. The reason why I like him is because, well, he's always there helping. He's always there for her. He always helps her. He defends her like when Mijin was initially rude to Hari. He pretty much got Hari's back, and I was really disappointed when they killed him off. It was not really good compared to his webtoon counterpart who sacrificed himself to save Hari. And well, can I add at least one bonus character? For some reason, there's this character who everyone doesn't seem to like much, but for some reason I seem to like. Her name is Hyeryung. She's the girl with the pink vest. I don't know why, but for some reason during the show, even though she doesn't do she pretty much doesn't do anything apart from just be in the background and helping the characters in the background. For some reason, I felt like I could really relate to her a lot because I always thought if I was in a zombie outbreak, I would definitely be the person who would just follow along with the group and not do anything unless the group says so.
I think the characters are really strong because, like I kind of mentioned at the top of the show, you've got the parents, the children, and the teachers. And I think for me, there were so many strong characters, and I think it was such a good show, which kind of leads us on to the ratings now. So just a very quick recap. I scored All of Us Are Dead 8 out of 10. IMDb has it at 7.5 out of 10. And in terms of Rotten Tomatoes, 88% and 80% in terms of the audience. So Daniel, what did you give it out of 10 and why?
I gave it an 8 out of 10 because, well, it does a lot of good stuff, but there are a few things that there are a few flaws in it. Like, example, they're like, because, the characters, like, in the show, it's earlier established that the zombie movies and series exists, and so the characters even talk about it, but there's some stuff they don't do. Like, example, like, when they go in the hallway the second time, they don't seem to have like much things to protect themselves against any potential zombie or any potential bites, and they only start protecting themselves way later, like in the series. And another thing is, well, there are a few characters who like their arcs or their stuff just don't go anywhere or are pretty unsatisfactory. Like one of them being Na Yeon's arc. I know some people think her death is deserved and all that, but I'd say, like, even though, yeah, her death is kind of deserved, at the same time, that means that the teacher, Miss Park's death was for nothing. And, well, originally I heard that Na-yeon was supposed to have a redemption arc, but because the actress was filming Squid Game, they ultimately cut it. And one more thing I didn't really like much about the show was, well, Guinam's death. Well, some people think he's still alive. I'm not sure, to be honest, but because of all the things he has done, I was hoping we would see him suffer at least a bit, because he's done some pretty despicable things to many characters, and yet the most we see is him just being used as a human shield when the fireball hits him. But that's just it. It's good how it is. There are flaws, but not enough flaws to ruin the experience for me.
Yeah, I agree. He definitely needed to suffer more. He did lots of horrible stuff in that show even before he was a zombie. So that brings us to an end. So Daniel, thank you for coming on to the show. I really appreciate you taking your time out of your busy day. Is there anything you want to say before we let you go?
Yeah, there's actually one bonus detail I forgot to mention about the series. I would like to mention right now, if it's fine.
Go for it, Daniel.
Well, there are actually like two details that you guys may or may not have noticed. One being that when the group is flying the drone through the school, one of the classrooms they pass by, the same classroom where they find the body of a girl who hung herself, one of the doors seems to have had a barricade installed in one of it, which seems to imply there may have been survivors in that classroom before something happened, and the group only finds the aftermath of what happened. As well as in that same scene, when they fly to the gate, there are several cars that are like parked nearby the school's entrance. And in the webtoon, it's actually acknowledged that many parents actually went to the school and died trying to find their kids. While in the webtoon, well, it's implied as, well, we see with Anjo's dad and Chang-san's mother.
That's really interesting, though, those observations. So thank you, Daniel, for that. Have you heard anything about when season 2 is coming out?
I've heard some rumors that they're going to start filming like next year, which, if I'm being honest, kind of frustrates me. Like, why did they take so long to like film season 2? I just hope that when they release it, that it'll be good and it'll be worth the wait.
Yeah, definitely. There's nothing worse waiting for ages to have something to come out and then it just be really disappointing. So, Daniel, thank you again for coming on to the show.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. The first time I've ever done something like this, and I'm really glad to have participated in this podcast.
That's a wrap for this episode. Thank you for listening. You can send us any questions, suggestions, and feedback feedback that you might have via our social media channels by searching for The Rating Room or by reaching out to us at theratingroom@gmail.com. We have a website and you can find our show notes, rankings and more by visiting www.theratingroom.com. Check out our YouTube channel too. Make sure you subscribe to our channels to stay up to date with the latest news. Make sure you check out our weekly episodes. See you next time on the Rating Room podcast.
The Rating Room. The Rating Room.